Joe Mauer was inducted into Cooperstown and the Hall of Fame over the weekend, and just about everyone has made it home. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the induction itself, and we'll do a little Joe Mauer appreciation. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. And I have been watching the Twins for 30 years, covering them for about half that. And I am joined by my great friend, Mr. Dave Brown. Talk to him, Dave.
Hi, Brandon. It's great to have Joe Mauer in the Hall of Fame. I did not go to the ceremony, but I watched on TV. I am very happy, though, that I got to vote for him and that it turned out to happen for him. I've been a baseball writer since 1998 and been in the Baseball Writers Association since 2012. But this was my first Hall of Fame vote in my life. So I'm happy to be a part of that.
All right. Well, hey, we'll talk about that, too, because that is certainly, getting into the BBWAA is a big thing. And then amassing the amount of service time necessary to vote for the Hall of Fame is also a big deal as well. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And, of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. If you have any questions for us, you can leave them in the chat on YouTube. You can hit us up on the tweets. You can leave us a review. 5-star reviews are huge for us on iTunes or on Spotify or wherever else you are listening. If they have a spot to review us, we'd love to hear from you. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And remember, you can catch every pitch of the Twins' hometown broadcast with Chris Atterbury and friends on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search Twins. While we don't know who is starting yet on Wednesday, up next for the Twins on Tuesday, it'll be Simeon Woods Richardson facing Phillies righty Zach Wheeler, with first pitch scheduled for 6:40 p.m. at Target Field. And I know that because I'm going to be in attendance, Mr. Dave Brown.
Oh, you're going. That's great. Where are your seats?
I believe they are in section T, which is, so the press box is in the Legends Club, which is like a bunch of letters. And then once you get out of the Legends Club, there's a few more sections that are letters. And this is called, I think, Legends Landing, which is an all-you-can-eat little spot that is still in a very nice kind of separate location, just not in the climate-controlled Legends Club. But my work has got an outing for us. So should be a lot of fun. Haven't been since last year's outing, and I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. I look forward to my return someday to Target Field. I have not been this year. Went last year, saw the White Sox lose. So, it was what it was Wednesday. So
it reminds me of that graduation speech. You're not special. You've seen them lose probably more than anyone. By the way, upcoming though, Simeon Woods Richardson and Zach Wheeler. We do not know yet Wednesday against Aaron Nola. So that's
why don't we know?
Well,
because you tell us.
Yeah, right. Paddock on the IL, and so there's a lot of speculation. I know that Louis Varland is scheduled to pitch Tuesday. David Festa, don't call me Matt Festa, on Wednesday in St. Paul. They could shake it up. DFA Diego Castillo, bring up Randy Dobnak. DFA Dobnak, bring up Brock Stewart, who's close in succession there. So I don't know. There's going to be a lot of balls in the air, literally and possibly figuratively as well. But you know who didn't hit a lot of baseballs in the air, Dave Brown?
Are we talking about Joe Mauer?
Yeah, we are. He was inducted into Cooperstown over the weekend, and you got the chance to vote for him. You told us you voted for him. I assume you voted for him. But what I want to know is this. When you found out you would be a Hall of Fame voter at some point, whether you thought about it the moment you got in 2012 or halfway through when you were in the BBWAA for, halfway to your point of getting to vote, was there ever a time where you thought about players where you're like, oh man, I'm going to be happy to help get that player into the Hall of Fame. Now, again, I know as people who cover baseball, you're not supposed to have favorites, you're not supposed to root, whatever. But are there players where you're like, yeah, I would be proud to say that I helped get that player into the Hall of Fame? And if so, is Joe Mauer on that list?
Well, it's not a matter of having a favorite because you had a good conversation with them or anything that has to do with things that aren't relevant as far as how good of a player they are. I look at it, people don't like the term gatekeeper, and it's got lots of negative connotations.
Right.
But I almost look at it as trying to prevent a wrong. I think they're players. If you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame and aren't, that's not an injustice on the scale of some other political and social injustices in the world. But I want to, if I had a chance to make sure that Joe Mauer to help that along was in the Hall of Fame, I was going to take it because he deserves it. I don't know if I always thought that or if I always thought it was off the top of my head. Was Joe Mauer definitely a Hall of Famer, toward the end of his career? I think I wasn't sure because of the same reasons that other people weren't sure, because of injuries and the shortness of his career. And, did he play long enough? Did he do enough? But that's why you have to really take a close examination of a person's career and compare them to his contemporaries and to a degree, those that came before him. And also look at it from a standpoint of is the Hall of Fame electing enough catchers? Kind of like how one of the reasons that I was so pro Ron Santo getting in the Hall of Fame was because they didn't elect enough third basemen. It's more of a clinical, it's sort of like the ultimate. Somebody said something wrong on the internet, and I'm going to write this injustice. But it's a real thing that you can do as a baseball writer to make sure that the right thing happens in terms of the history of the game. So that's where I come from.
And if I thought I would, if I was to get into the BBWAA, let's just say hypothetically tomorrow, the player I'd be thinking of as like, oh, that'd be great to help them vote for or to be voted for is Mike Trout, because he's probably somewhere 5 to 7 years on this side of the end of his career, and then 5 years after that. So, I mean, maybe that's something to strive for, but not really the point here. But that's kind of what I thought. When did you feel like, yes, Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer for you? Because so for me, it's actually shockingly counterintuitive. For me, it was the day, I don't know if it was 2013, 14, it was that off season where they announced he was done catching. And we could officially look at his catching career in its entirety. I mean, I know he caught that last pitch from Matt Belisle in 2018 and all that, but I mean, it's not often you get a clean break in a career. Kirby Puckett's, I mean, technically was a clean break, as much as it was also not clean in terms of where it left people feeling about his career because it was incomplete. But I think for me, just knowing what he accomplished as a catcher, and then, I mean, he had to play more years to kind of fill out that resume, I guess. But for me, as soon as he was done catching, he was a pretty good candidate.
Yeah, I would say that when did I remember noticing I first noticed Joe Mauer's B WAR when it was I noticed one day that it was pretty good. And I was like, this was after I don't know if he had retired yet, or maybe it was around the time that he retired. And I think maybe when it was finally official that he wasn't playing anymore, that's when I started to think about Mauer in earnest. I'm not necessarily one of those guys who, in the middle of someone's career, did Mauer seem like a guy who could be a Hall of Famer? Yes, when he was playing. But I also kind of realized mentally that his career was kind of short and it wasn't going to be a slam dunk if it ever happened. But around the time he retired, though, I started to look at, I wasn't a voter yet. Like I said, I just got the vote this year. I started to look at things like B WAR and saw how favorably he compared even with the shortness of his career. And I think that's when looking at the statistics, it wasn't like a romantic reminiscence of highlights in his career. I had that in my head. I had the big Joe Mauer moments in my head, and I remember his huge season 2009, and so it was kind of something that I was conscious of. But it wasn't until after he retired, and I started to look at how he compared to other catchers of his time, but also of history, and I realized that this guy deserves lots of consideration. And after a little more thinking on it, that's kind of when I came to my conclusion.
Well, I definitely am glad that you came to that conclusion. I don't remember, before we go to break here, another player missing like the first month of the season and still winning MVP like Joe Mauer did in 09. That was just a magical season for him, a magical season for the Twins, including that walk-off win. Alexi Casilla actually just recently turned 40, and we give him some love at the end of every show. But he was the one who drove home Carlos Gomez to win that game. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's never far from our thoughts that that 2009 season was magical in every way, including it being the swan song for the Metrodome. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Mauer's best seasons. We'll talk about the 2001 draft, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about the other catchers that you think you'll end up voting for, because it's a little tricky voting on the Hall of Fame. And so we'll get right to that here in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Twins is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Summer travel is getting hot. I know that Dave is headed east. I'm headed west. But none of this would be possible without Booking.com. It's a lot of opportunities for you to go check out cities that are behind enemy lines, whether it's Kansas City. Although Dave probably wouldn't need to book anywhere in Kansas City, but I would. Same goes vice versa for Minneapolis. But if you want to go to those really, truly despisable enemy cities like Chicago, again, I should be careful what I say with Dave here in the conversation. But if you want to go to Detroit, even Milwaukee, I mean, they're trying to force that as a rivalry. You could do that too. You could find a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a vacation rental, a resort, and so much more on Booking.com. You just might find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city. You might even get a spot overlooking their stadium, which would be kind of exciting. With that said, the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. And we got to give a shout to FanDuel. We love sports, but the sports aren't sportsing very much in the summer. There's no NBA. There's no NHL. WNBA is going to be off here for the Olympics. It's going to be MLB or bust. But as everything winds down and we get fewer games, FanDuel helps us keep the sports going strong whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app, and they have a deal for you. You can dream up any bets you want whenever you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. By the way, the Twins today are what's the opposite of favored, I guess? The other side is favored by 1.5. The Phillies.
They're underdogged.
Underdogs. There you go. They're 1.5 run dogs. They're a minus 130. They're plus 126 on the money line, and the over-under is 8. The way the offenses have been going late for the Twins and the fact that Simeon Woods Richardson is facing a pretty good lineup, I feel pretty good about that over-under, taking the over. So, again, head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Yeah, Dave, I wanted to ask you about the 2001 MLB draft because I actually randomly just every now and then I'll go on YouTube and pull up a Twins game from a random year and watch it. It's just kind of a fun little exercise. I don't have to watch that closely, and if I wonder when something's going to happen, I can look it up on Baseball Reference if I get too impatient. And I don't know. It's just kind of mindless TV. And so I pulled up a game from, it must have been early June 2001 based on the timing. And so Cleveland was in town, and it was an absolute bloodbath. I think the final was 12-11 in extras. The Twins walked it off. Spoiler alert. Sorry, Dave, if you were going to watch it. Now you know what happens. But this is something I didn't know, by the way. We'll get into this in a second. The game was on the eve of the 2001 MLB draft, and there's a little graphic that says, who will the Twins select? And it's Mark Pryor and Joe Mauer and Mark Teixeira, and then DeJuan Brazelton, who went third overall and had very, very minimal of a career. Certainly the outlier of that quartet. But then they have Dave St. Peter on with a very young-looking Anthony LaPanta, which is actually Spanish for Tony the Panther. So
I love that cereal.
Tony the Tiger's cousin, I guess.
Oh.
Anyway, so those guys went 1, 2, 3, and 5. I did not realize Mark Teixeira went 5th. I always assumed he'd gone 4th. Do you know who went 4th?
I do, because I'm cheating.
Oh.
Gavin Floyd, or as I sometimes called him when he didn't pitch well, Gervin Flurd.
I was going to say Gervin Flurd because Irma Gerd Fernser first.
Yes.
Like the old cat meme.
It does sound like the Target lady was talking when I'd say Gervin Flurd, yeah.
Gervin Flurd. And then Josh Karp. Don't remember much about him. Chris Smith, John Van Bankschoten, Colt Griffin, Chris Burke, and Kenny Baugh. Mike Jones. Who? Casey Kochman, Jake Gautreau. I'm just going till I get to another good player. Gabe Gross, Chris Honell, Dan Denham, Aaron Heilman, Mike Fontenot, more like Fontenot.
Well, he was a contemporary of Ryan Theriot. So Fontenot and Theriot, he was a try-hard Cub.
Mike Fontenot. He was. Brad Hennessy, Jason Bulger, John Ford Griffin, McKay McBride. I
love John Ford Griffin's, he sounds like a 70s crooner. Wasn't he England Dan and John Ford Griffin?
And then I remember McKay McBride as a lefty reliever late.
Wow, these guys suck.
Bobby Crosby, Jeremy Bonderman was pretty decent.
Bobby Crosby's in the A's front office now. I'm pretty sure he is.
Probably, yeah. Alan Horn, Justin Pope, Josh Burris. And with the last pick in the first round, before we get to the supplementals, Noah Lowry was a pretty dang good pitcher for a minute there. But even the supplementals, like this has got to be the worst.
David Wright going 38 to the Mets. That was good drafting.
But I mean, Brian Bass, Mike Woods, Jeff Mathis, Bronson Sardina, J.D. Martin, Michael Garcia-Parra, who was compensation for A-Rod, John Reinecker, David Wright, Wyatt Allen, Richard Lewis. I didn't know Richard Lewis played baseball.
That's a very funny pick.
Todd Linden, John Skaggs, Mike Conroy, Jason Nix.
Jason Nix had a long career, buddy. You can't take that away from him.
But what a dreadful first round. We just, outside of Mauer, Pryor, Teixeira, Floyd, and then this was the land of misfit prospects. You know, Kochman had a nice long career, but it was never quite who they hoped.
Who's never heard of a Kochman in the box?
But I mean, Jeremy Bonderman had a decent career. Bobby Crosby was Rookie of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. That's not a very good first round. Cheers to the Twins though for sticking to their guns and taking Joe Mauer when I think people kind of ripped them for not taking Mark Pryor. Did they not?
Here's how I remember it, because I was covering the Cubs in those days. Was that? Yeah, kind of.
You knew of the Cubs.
I was Cubs. I was at the ballpark, but I was working for the AP. I didn't have a full-time gig yet.
You were Cubs adjacent.
I was Cubs adjacent, not Cubs Jason. That'd be like Jason Marquis, I guess.
Brooklyn's favorite.
People are like, well, the Twins aren't going to take Pryor because they're not going to. He's a Boris client, and they're not going to pay him. That was basically, it was cheap lads.
Wow.
So that was the take, that the guy that they should pick is Pryor, but they're not going to do that because, and I don't know if that's fair, because Mauer, I think there was a little bit of, is Mauer going to go to Florida State to play quarterback? I don't know when that was settled, but that's somehow, I guess he could have, if somebody else had taken him and they hadn't, he could have used that as leverage. So I don't remember exactly the chronology there, but it's probably a little unfair for people to criticize the Twins for not spending money. But guess what? They did, and they're still doing it.
Well, and it worked out. I mean, for all the barbs they may or may not have taken, he has turned out to be.
I mean, it was good. It was good. It was a good thing they picked Mauer.
He was the best player in that round. I mean, Pryor had a higher peak, maybe. Teixeira was great for very long, but he played first base. So, I mean, it's hard to give him crazy value. And in a lot of ways, David Wright's career kind of mirrored Joe Mauer's. It was
very much
a city that wanted more of him, wanted more from him, but in general speaking, loved him. And I think that when we look back on how Mauer was viewed, we saw that it was more of a vocal minority that would always boo Mauer or makes too much money.
It's still they're still around too. These
Yeah,
people,
but it's like a
these
vocal
wrong
minority.
people. You want to know something funny?
Yeah.
David Wright was one of the people I voted for. He was my 10th man. I don't know if I'll be able to vote for him next year just based on who's on the ballot and who isn't anymore and all that stuff. But it's a stretch a little bit, but I definitely thought about Joe Mauer when I voted for Wright for similar health shortened reasons. You know, he ran hot there for a number of years, and after age 31, he hardly had any at bats anymore. He was done early. And I think they've made exceptions or allowances for other players who had shortened careers. Kirby Puckett is one. Sandy Koufax is another one.
Ross Young's.
Sure, very olds, but
yes.
I mean, Roberto Clemente had 3,000 hits. He was getting it anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot. The precedent is there. So it's a little bit of a sympathy thing and a what could have been. And I guess that could be a slippery slope, but they're both deserving players, at least in the context of last year.
That's why they let you and others sit in the guard tower out front. You're the gatekeepers of the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, and yep. I was going to say something very that I shouldn't have, and I stopped myself, so that's good.
Well, hey, we'll take our last break here, and then when we come back, I have some career accolades. I want to mention, too, why I said almost everyone's back, because the Delta-related travel issues extend to a very prominent Twins figure. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll fill you in on the rest of the details and give Joe Mauer a send-off like they gave him in 2018. Passion, drive, and patience are the winning formula for championships, and they're also what keep your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether you're looking for a supercharger, roof rack, exhaust kit, LED headlights, or more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million, that's with an M, parts for your number one ride, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your fit. I did that again. Your part. I said pit last time too. Your part is guaranteed to fit every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, and you're burning rubber legally, not as an exhibition driver. Just making sure people know. Because though, with that said, they have all the parts you need, and they're at the prices you want, so you can easily make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to customers in the United States. And finally, giving some love to PrizePicks. It's the easiest way to play DFS. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, and it has over 5 million active members. And it's super easy. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Now, there's only MLB going right now, but that doesn't mean there's any shortage of action. MLB's got every stat under the sun, every team playing right now. And so you can do more than and less than, or less than, not and. I guess you can do more than and less than because you're doing it for different stats. But if you want to do total bases for one guy, runs batted in for another, or hits for one, you have a lot of options. Basically, the limitation is whatever you can imagine in your mind. PrizePicks also available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Hop on the app and make sure that you are in a state that has the green light and give it a shot. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDON MLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Okay, Dave, we're coming down the home stretch here. And I saw a tweet, I think Dick Bramer's in Hartford, Connecticut on a connecting flight to come home. So that was kind of interesting, is the Hall of Fame induction was a couple days ago, and old Dick Bramer's still trying to find his way home. And funny enough, he lives like 4 miles from me out here on the outer.
So you could have gone to pick him up.
I could have, but he's still not. I'm not driving to Hartford. That's for sure.
Well, you guys haven't seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I mean, that's the sketchbook for getting home in these situations. I don't know why we don't refer to that constantly, but Dick Bramer should be home by now and with his family celebrating Christmas. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think I would be. That's John Candy, right?
Yes, and
Yeah,
Steve Martin.
I think I'd be John Candy in that situation, but I don't know. So Joe Mauer, let's bring this full circle. Career 306, 388, 439 batter, 124 OPS plus. You can break it down to one MVP, top 10 MVP finishes in 5 separate seasons. Let's see, 5 Silver Sluggers, 3 Gold Gloves at catcher, 6 All-Star
French hens.
Yeah, I'm kind of. I thought Baseball Reference had this stuff posted at the top. Oh, there it is. I missed it, and instead was counting them out on the air. Just like a real true, bona fide superstar on a podcast. But career with the Twins, only 6 sacrifice bunts. I mean, this is all you could really ask for from a hometown kid.
Well, you can't let him in the Hall of Fame then if he only had 6 sack bunts. No, it's another way. Mauer not sacrificing himself for the team. It's like these people get angry about him. He was an excellent defensive catcher and just one of the very best hitters for a catcher.
I think played on his defense because of his size too. Like being that tall, it's hard to be a catcher because the ump's got to look over you.
Yes. So
actually, pitchers tell me that, like that it was a challenge. Like some of them liked throwing to Drew Butera more because Drew Butera was like 5'4" and 110.
Would he have trouble with the framing revolution then because his big frame was getting in the way of the framing?
He might have been one of those doggone one-leg catchers, though.
Right. Although that's a long leg to be sticking out or whatever they do. It's not Tony Pena style, but it's something like that. He's got a couple contemporaries. They're not up for the Hall of Fame yet. Mm-hmm. Buster Posey is soon. Yadier Molina is soon. I think those are the 2 next guys that are going to be strongly considered. Buster Posey had a very similar career to Mauer, and I think was probably a little better defensively. So yep. I'm not going to have a hard time voting for him, I don't think, when the time comes. And Molina is a guy that you kind of have to go on faith a little bit, just because some of the statistics and some of how we quantify what makes a good catcher.
Yeah.
Some of it's anecdotal and, what the pitchers say. And, I think that I'm going to look hard at him too, but I think I'll probably vote for him as well.
You know how baseball Twitter loves spoonerisms?
Yeah.
What's it called if you swap out the last sound instead of the first?
Does it have a nickname? I don't know.
I just don't do it with Buster Posey. Yeah. So
right.
Anyway, Buster's an easy yes for me. Salvador Perez probably going to be in that conversation sooner rather than later too. And again, it's tough because catcher war, like the thing that I come back to is that the best outfielders of all time are 100 plus. The best third baseman of all time, 100 plus. Best starters of all time, 100 plus. And then Joe Mauer's in that. What is it? Did he even reach 60? I think he's in the 50.
55.
Yeah.
0.2.
And 55-2 on Baseball Reference. Yeah. But relative to the greatest catchers of all time, and again, it's not fair to expect someone to be an all-time great to have a chance. The measuring stick is Johnny Bench, and I think on Baseball Reference, he's in the 70s somewhere. Both
65.7.
Yeah, both.
Oh, wait, that's offense. I'm sorry.
75-1. So 70s both in the years he played and the war he accumulated. I mean, to get to even 80%, or I mean, it's not quite that, but of Bench is incredible. Consensus greatest catcher of all time, at least for my money. I don't know. I mean, I have no issue with Joe going in, and honestly, some of the best memories I have is by the way, I have a little trivia question. Do you know who he got his first big league hitting, or who he faced in his MLB debut, pitcher wise?
I don't remember.
CC Sabathia, which is kind of a fun little tidbit.
CC on the ballot for the first time in the probably. He's projected to be. this season. So
yeah, so that's exciting. 06 and 09 were some of the funnest seasons I can remember. 06. So of the years I've watched growing up, the most fun I've had, and again, remember that I started watching in 93. So 91's out, 87's out. It's some mix of 2019 when they hit all them home runs, 2006 when they went just absolutely bananas in the second half on the left arm of Francisco Liriano. And then either 2004, just because it was the first year I could really be super into it because I lived down here. 2009 is up there. 2010 is up there. But Joe Mauer is pretty much in the center of the seasons that I remember and loved.
Yeah. I mean, he's, I don't know if he's like, you could say he's your childhood, or he's certainly a big portion of it. He's kind of the icon from that era. And, you know, one of the reasons you're the kind of baseball fan you are, and why you like that draws your interest to the game, kind of looking for that next sort of like Joe Mauer dude, you know, that you can kind of hook yourself onto emotionally. There's one thing I wanted to talk about, isn't so much like the past, but the future.
Yeah.
I was on a panel of people that got to ask him a few questions before his speech earlier last week. And I wanted to know what the next stage of his career, of his professional life might be. His girls, his twins, funny enough, are 10 and his little boy's 5. And Mauer basically said, he had a golden opportunity to retire when he did and be with his kids when he was. And a lot of people haven't had that chance. And he is excited to continue that a little bit, but he's definitely got an eye on tomorrow. And I asked him, are you going to be a coach professionally, maybe in the majors? And he's like, there's going to be another chapter in my life too. Baseball has given me so much. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge to give back and to pass along. I've been doing that now, but just not in an official role. So never say never. What the role will look like, I really don't have a clue right now. I'm just maybe being able to help a young player or a coach somewhere in the front office in any way I can. I definitely would be open to doing that. So I don't think he's like on the verge of asking the Twins for a job, but I would say it's going to be there for him maybe the next 5 to 8 years or something, after he's gotten a chance to parent a little bit more with his young kids.
Well, and it certainly feels like one of those special advisor roles that guys get after the fact, if not more involved. And also too, I think the girls graduate in, something like 8 years, but Chip, what an incredible baseball name, Chip Mauer. Just a chip off the old block, and he looks exactly like his dad. Would be about 13. That's about the perfect time to bring the boy to the ballpark. Just like, hey, have him hang around, schlubbing around the ballpark. Some guys have kids that are 13 when they're playing, and you see young Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Prince Fielder, Ken Griffey Jr. There's a lot of them. This would probably be the next best thing, and who knows? Maybe Chip Mauer will be available for the Twins in 2037 to draft first overall. Hopefully not first overall, because that would mean that some things
they
have
had
gone
a bad
wrong.
year.
Yeah, but
the White Sox would screw that up because they're going to have the worst record ever, and they're still not going to draft first overall. So you never know with that kind of stuff, Brandon.
What an incredible coincidence, though, to have hometown boy, Hall of Famer, come up for draft the year that you have the first overall pick, and it's just, and
that's some great serendipity, or
as much as. Well, it's sort of like the Nationals getting back-to-back number 1 picks the years that Harper and Strasburg come out. I mean, 2 of the best draftable talents in MLB history. So, I'm glad we didn't talk about the general bitterness that Twins fans too have had towards Mauer, because it really shouldn't touch his story. So I did have it written down, like, to go over that. But honestly,
we referred to it enough.
Yeah, I'd rather just leave it at. Also, too, like, the Twins didn't get a chance to draft Dave Winfield, Jack Morris, Paul Molitor. So maybe it was time for them to.
How many Hall of Famers are going to grow up in the same apartment building in St. Paul? I mean, they didn't. It wasn't quite that, but it's still pretty amazing that they're all from like the same 5 square miles.
Yeah, well, and I think another one went to Cretan, but I could be wrong. Anyway, not important. That's it. That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Twins. He's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren, signing off saying thank you so much, and we'll see ya tomorrow night.